you can see the fiery aftermath from this crash following this bad crash. It all happened on South Walgrove Avenue just before 11 o'clock this morning. The car, that Mini Cooper, barreled through the house, causing a massive fire. Firefighters knocked down the flames and pulled the charred car out of the home. The driver's license plates come back to actress Anne Heche. Sky Fox video shows Heche pop up disoriented while she's wrapped in a white cloth following this crash. Neighbors in the area have been rushing to this scene all afternoon to try to figure out what was going on. Take a listen to what this one witness had to say about what she saw.
There was 3 fire engines here and a lot of commotion, but the result was the fire that was going on. The billows of fire were so like 200 feet high, so I know it had to be pretty severe inside.
Sup, sobers? So I'm pretty sure they call them accidents because, well, you didn't do it intentionally. It just happened accidentally. So, like, it's just something that happened. Nobody planned on this. But what do you call it when somebody gets into an accident, but it really wasn't an accident? Somebody set this up. What do you call that? Backstabbing? A vicious ex-girlfriend? Super not cool, man. Maybe silencing? When you typically hear of these accidents, isolated, they seem pretty reasonable. Sure, crazy accident. Wow, that's tragic and that's unfortunate. Usually there's some sort of substances involved. Of course, they were high. That's why they did it. When you start to look at the similarities between all these accidents, then it makes you wonder, was this really an accident? Or this? Or maybe this? Or this? Or perhaps this one was an accident. They were all just accidents. And we haven't talked about a gnarly accident like this since we talked about the escort who lived in Miami, who was found with pink coffee table powders, who was 7 minutes away from Diddy's house when her accident happened. She ended up killing 2 people. Truly sad. But with all of these stories, they can certainly count on the main population to not know enough about each individual person to really know what's actually going on. And that allows them to spin the story any way they want to. But with them providing all of the answers to you, whether they know or not, it limits you from asking too many questions. But that's not what we do here. So let's go.
Alcohol.
All right, okay, welcome back to Sobering Stories with me, DJ Petrovsky. First order of business, the record wall is under construction. We got some good ones up already, but obviously it has everything to do with funding. So anyways, stoked about that. Let me know what you guys think. I think it's pretty cool. Hopefully it's not unlevel, not level. Hopefully it's straight is what I mean, but not its orientation or its preference for, whatever, but hopefully it's actually like a straight line is what I mean. Second order of business, and some of you guys know this already because you've jumped in the lives, but we've been covering the Diddy trial, at least as much as I can. Obviously, life gets in the way sometimes. Last couple of days, Bodie's been sick with norovirus apparently, and so he's been coming out both ends. And it doesn't give me any hope because that makes it seem like Kim and I are going to be next because I know norovirus spreads pretty quickly. But anyways, if you guys want to jump in on the Diddy trial coverage, hang out with us. We talk about a lot of the cases I've covered. We talk about different things going on in the world. We talk about random stuff. ADHD runs full throttle during the lives. You're pre-warned. But I think the ADHD fuels a lot of interesting conversation, and the chat is always a ton of fun. So if you guys are interested, swing on by, hop in one of the lives, say what's up in the chat, and hang out with us while we cover the Diddy trial. The stuff coming out in this trial is not only crazy weird, some of it's mildly comical, and some of it's really comical, but then the rest of it is like hard to actually fathom that it's real life. And if I'm being completely honest with you guys, I actually was just needing a break. So the Diddy trial stuff going live gave me a good chance to get out of the grind that I was in. I'm happy to jump back in it this week, but I think I just needed a moment, just like a breather. That was nice. And the lives have been a lot of fun, and it's opened up a new avenue for me to connect with you guys and bring more content to you guys. So that's cool. Yay. Business item number 3. This is going to be the sponsor for the week. Sponsor this week is actually going to be the homies. Whoops. There we go. Yeah, and I'm not talking about these ones specifically. I'm talking about your homies. Because I know you guys all have homies out there probably doing creative stuff. They probably want you to follow them on whatever social platform. I'm sure I've got some homies watching this video right now. The homie love doesn't go unnoticed. And you cannot appreciate your homies enough, seriously. Just like support what they do, like their socials, follow their stuff. And even if it's not your thing, like just show support for what they're trying to do, because they're trying to do something they love and they're going to reciprocate. I guarantee it, because I've gotten a lot of homie reciprocated love on this channel. One such instance is my homie that I recently made friends with. He works across the hall from me. He's just the dopest, coolest guy. He has the dopest style ever. And I think that's how we started chatting. I was just like, bro, I love your vibe. Your style's so dope. Like, he rocks like such a 90s getup, but he pulls it off so well. I don't know. He's awesome. His name's John D. And he was in with one of his homies the other day, and they were talking to me about their music, and that's why his homie was out. They're going to do some music stuff. And I was like, oh, I didn't know you did music, bro. Like, let me check it out. Let me follow you. So I follow them, and man, their music is fire. Like, fire. It gives me Wiz Khalifa, Mac Miller kind of vibes.
Yeah, connected like computers to a mouse. I can show you how to move, just take a trip to the south. I just landed at the Denver International, brought some tree from home, and I had my baggage full. I ain't scared, somebody had to do it. Call me, grab the M's, who knew I had this for. The way they living, you can tell that they ain't got no rules. Hey, let the pop bubble in this bitch. Let the pop bubble in this bitch. I got some real ones in the cut, don't start no trouble in this bitch. Hey.
The beats are just phenomenal. But after listening to these guys like all day, getting straight up hooked immediately, I was just like, man, I'm going to shout you guys out on my channel. I'm going to show some support, because they do not have the following that I would expect them to have with the quality of music they're pumping out. It's just like, what? So you guys should definitely go follow them on Spotify, on Instagram. But Dante M's is M's apostrophe $. But you can find him on Spotify. All amazingly fire. And the guy who makes all the beats for him, John D. Poppy, my homie John D., he's the guy who works across the hall from me. He does all the beats for Dante. So I don't know, if you guys are into rap music, even if you don't like music, I still encourage you to go follow them. They're two of the nicest, realest, most authentic, kind, genuine human beings that I've met. And I really do appreciate what they do. Dante's lyrics are so smart, intellectual, and they rise above the normal garbage that you hear in rap.
These ain't even raps no more. I've been writing scriptures. The world been in my hands so long that they started to blister. I love solitude. When you do it at this magnitude, you only move profound, break rappers down to molecules. Hey, you can't ride unless you down the bank. I one sneak this away from really dropping names.
I just truly love these guys, and I was so stoked to be able to shout them out on the channel, because not only for your benefit, but also because I really feel like their music deserves way more love. So go show them some love. Support your local homie today. Now, Anne Heche and we weren't homies, but I could imagine if we did know each other, we probably would be. She seems like such a fun, bright, light, just this attractive personality, and she just seems like a lot of fun to just talk to, you know what I mean? Just to banter with. But in a lot of cases, personality traits like this can be a warning sign that maybe this person's been through some trauma, because it's a typical coping skill. It's a way to make light of dark things you're trying to deal with, and it's a way to kind of distance yourself from the reality of it. And in Anne's case, that's definitely true. Things started for her on May 25th, 1969 in Aurora, Ohio, when she was born to Mother Nancy Prickett and Father Donald Joseph Heche. Her mom was a stay-at-home mom. I guess back then they called them homemakers. And her dad was a choir director, but he also lived a closeted secret life. He was in the closet, if you know what I mean, and he was having these extramarital affairs behind closed doors. But even worse, he was subjugating Anne to years of SA. Anne was the youngest of 5 kids, and by the time she came into the world, her family was already in pretty serious financial turmoil. And with her dad's secret life, things were just not good. And she immediately was born into a house full of chaos, trauma, and unfortunately, physical abuse. And I mention this every single episode. These are crucial times in kids' lives, and Anne all the way up until the age of 13, was continuously abused by her own father. And it was so bad that she actually caught the herp from her own dad. What? But in 1983, her father, after living years in the closet, ended up passing away from a terminal virus. And that would leave Anne in a state where she's confused, heartbroken, yet traumatized all at the same time. She's not sure how to process all of this. It's a lot. At this time, Anne was working at a dinner theater in Swainton, New Jersey. She was making $100 a week working this theater job. And this would kind of thrust her into an adult role where she's having to be a breadwinner for the family way too early. I mean, 12 years old, bringing home the bacon, $100 a week. And one of the less popularized, exciting parts of being an adult is addiction. Anne seems to have fallen into addiction fairly early, in her early teen years, started experimenting with different drugs, drinking, smoking the devil's lettuce, and this would lay the groundwork for what would be a lifelong struggle with addiction. And I mean, can you blame her? She just got thrust into adulthood. She spent her entire childhood being essayed by her dad, and she got the herp. Oh, and her dad passed away. But acting for Anne was more than just making that guap. She really enjoyed it. It got her outside of herself, brought her outside of her bubble, and she already struggled with having multiple personalities. She says that she already had a personality named Celestia because her middle name is Celeste. And this is kind of a way for a lot of people who've gone through something traumatic to separate themselves from the trauma by creating this other personality. This personality is experiencing it, not me. It's a way to really distance yourself from the abuse. But she seemed to really enjoy acting. She really found a passion for it, and she continued pursuing it.
Not everybody has a story of discovery like I do. I was discovered in a high school play, Francis Parker, Chicago. Jennifer Beals went to my school and a casting director was on her way to Los Angeles. Got snowed in, called the school because Jennifer Beals used to go there and said, "Is there a play on tonight?" It was Thornton Wilder's Skin of Our Teeth, right after she asked me to come and audition for a soap opera in New York, and the rest is history. Vicki Marley, Another World.
She finally went to 2 auditions for a show called Another World. It was a soap opera at the time in 1987, and she had to go through 2 auditions, and maybe that's because she landed the role of 2 characters on the show. And I've seen this before where they cast one character, but they use 2 different people for that character, kind of like the Olsen twins. But she was doing the opposite. She was playing twins in this show. She's just one person. But this is where Anne got her big break. And shoot, what better way than a soap opera, because that's consistent money. And she was in this role all the way up until 1991, which is the same year that she won a Daytime Emmy Award for Outstanding Younger Actress. This marked Anne Heche as an up-and-coming rising star in Hollywood, and she made her film debut in 1993 in The Adventures of Huck Finn, and this would start a long career, a full IMDb's worth of movies and TV shows that she'd be doing. But Anne wouldn't hit level 9 turtle superstar status until 1997 with films like Donnie Brasco with Al Pacino and Johnny Depp, Wag the Dog, alongside Dustin Hoffman and Robert De Niro. And she was also in a film called 6 Days, 7 Nights, which is one of her more famous, popularized films that she starred in alongside Harrison Ford.
What's the problem?
Some sort of creature has just swum up my pants.
Not gonna lie, I haven't seen any of these movies. Not gonna lie, actually, I've never seen a movie with Anne Heche in it until recently. At least not that I knew of. But as this rising, young, hot new actress in the industry, you can imagine she's going to link up with some bigger names. And one of those names in 1994 was Steve Martin, legendary comedian. But it was a very short-lived, 6-month romance that was heavily criticized. And the reason that it ended is because Anne ended up meeting Ellen DeGeneres, which is another rising young female star comedian at the time. And the two of them, after linking up, the chemistry and the fire, the flame was hot. Anne recalls seeing Ellen DeGeneres at a Vanity Fair Oscar party, and it was kind of like love at first sight. Even though she was still with Steve Martin at the time, she was just in love. The two of them started a kind of secret relationship in 1997, because obviously at this time, that wasn't a very mainstream idea, wasn't widely accepted. But they were so serious that they actually had talked about marriage, and they're quoted as saying that if one of them ended up passing away, that the other one would want to go too, which is kind of poetic, Romeo and Juliet kind of stuff, but a little extreme. But they didn't keep it secret for very long, because in April of 1997, Anne would invite Ellen to be her +1 for the premiere of her new movie, Volcano. This is a huge no-no in the industry, apparently, because Anne describes having this meeting with Ellen where she talks about wanting to bring her, and she says that there was 5 guys in suits that showed up and all told her, like, no, you're not bringing her. Do not bring her. If you do, you will be fired. She also says that Ellen told her, like, no, don't do it. Please don't do this. You don't know what you're up against. You don't know what these people are capable of.
I asked her to come and meet me for lunch at the Four Seasons, and I was greeted by 5 suits. As far as I remember, I didn't invite anybody else to lunch today. And they said, we know that you want to take Ellen to the premiere, and we're here to tell you that you will be fired from your $10 million picture deal if you do it. Ellen looked at me. I was sitting on the armchair because she lit a Four Seasons chair, and she said, do what they say. You don't know what you're up against. We've only known each other for a couple of days. And I said, I do know what I'm up against.
Not only were Anne and Ellen escorted out of the premiere, but they were also prohibited from attending the after party. They didn't want any pictures taken of the two of them. But what they did in that moment, that they may not have even realized that they did, was they started a huge movement and they became huge icons in the LGBTQ ? Movement. And I've got to say, mad props to Anne for doing that, because she wasn't going to let anybody tell her how to live her life and who she could bring and who she could love and who she could talk to. And I absolutely love that. But just like they said, Anne ended up losing a $10 million deal that she had with Fox just because she brought Ellen to this premiere. Isn't that crazy? She then goes on to say how she was blacklisted from the industry from working or doing any major roles for 10 years. After looking at Anne's IMDb, though, there was something I found kind of interesting. It doesn't seem like her career took a downward turn until post-2000, because from 1997 all the way up until 2000, that's when she was coming out with all those bangers that I just mentioned before. So it wasn't until 2000 that things started to taper off for her. She was doing smaller roles, less of them, and any of the movies that she was in were not major blockbusters. What's the significance of the year 2000? Besides being the turn of the century and all the computers shutting down and Y2K? Well, that's when Ellen and Anne broke up. Now, I know what you're thinking. Surely it was an amicable split, right? Yeah, I mean, kind of. Except that Anne broke down about 40 miles west of Fresno. She must have been high on MDMA or something, but she found herself on one of the local residents' doorsteps, and when she knocked on the door, she started telling them that she was God and she was going to take them back on her spaceship to heaven. And it freaked these people out. So obviously they're like, yo, call the cops. She wasn't arrested, but she was transported to the University Medical Center, and she was basically treated for psychosis, especially since she was rambling off all that crazy stuff. They eventually released her and said that essentially it was just a psychotic break. Now, the timing, of course, is strange because it is in response to her and Ellen's breakup, essentially. This happened in the same month of August 2000. It's kind of interesting to me because Anne supposedly broke up with Ellen. Ellen has been quoted as saying, I really have no idea why she broke up with me. I was completely blindsided. I have no idea, and I would love answers just as much as you guys. And somebody who knows exactly why she broke up with them and somebody who has things to hide would definitely say something like that. And if Anne Heche broke up with Ellen, then it doesn't really make sense that she would be all sad and depressed off on this drug-fueled space Christian rescue mission, wearing only a bra. And like I mentioned before, it was after the year 2000 that Anne Heche's career starts to slowly diminish. And there's even news reports talking about how this Fresno incident was kind of like the final nail in the coffin for her. She wasn't really in any mainstream anything following this Fresno incident. People kind of wrote her off as crazy after this. And this would continue all the way up until about 2010. But don't call it a comeback, Tom Brady, because she comes back, which I think is a really hard thing to do in the industry.
Guess what? 2 people who wanted more than anything to have my truth buried. It was not my timing. I did not and could not ask God for what that would be. All I could do was stay on my truth, do what I was doing, and study this thing called love that we tried to bury. And now I am up and out of the ground. And unfortunately, those 2 women could not shut me down.
One of her first big breaks on her comeback was a show called Men in Trees, but a movie that came out called Toxic Skies is one that I find particularly interesting, and it was also part of this resurgence of Anne Heche in film and in mainstream TV. But this Toxic Skies movie was about them spreading this pandemic through chemtrails that they release in the skies. You can't make this up. But that's not all. She also stars in a TV series called Hung. And this series involves a husband who is trying to make ends meet, and he's like a high school basketball coach or something, but he starts male escorting on the side. So, I mean, kind of interesting. She also starred in a more recent film called The Vanished, which is about a daughter who goes missing. And once the police end up coming up with nothing, the mom and dad take things into their own hands. And of course, Anne Heche plays the mom in the story. Kind of an interesting plot idea, I think.
I just did a movie about this very thing, and it was one of my delightful pleasures in my life that I got to act this role, because The Vanished was a movie that was two movies at the same time. And why I found that to be so significant in my artistry was to be able to show what it looks like to be told the same story, but because of point of view, we miss the truth and the facts. That's the story of my life.
She also starred in another movie just a couple years later called You're Killing Me. Really just the timing of everything. That's a very interesting title. But one of her final and probably one of her more notable roles is The Girl in Room 13. It was a Lifetime movie, so it wasn't a documentary like a lot of people say, but it was a Lifetime movie about a girl who gets forcefully trafficked by her ex-boyfriend after coming back from rehab. And because the girl has a history of drug use, nobody takes the mom seriously. Anne Heche plays the mom, and she goes out and basically Liam Neeson's this whole thing, basically like Taken. It's like, I'm going to find my daughter wherever she is. It is a very Lifetime movie, kind of a movie. And I personally thought it was super lame, but in addition to the movie, she did a number of PSAs talking about trafficking and the problem that we face today. And she was a huge advocate against the whole human trafficking thing. So right up towards the end in 2022, these were the things she was working on.
Love is a powerful weapon in the hands of human traffickers.
In the United States, most sex trafficking victims were originally recruited by someone they loved or trusted.
By understanding how human trafficking really works, you can make a difference in the life of someone at risk.
For more information, please visit polarisproject.org.
Help is available. Text Be Free to 233-733 or call the National Human Trafficking Hotline, 888-373-7888. Together, let's stop violence against women.
But honestly, her IMDb kind of reminds me of David Carradine's. Like, you can just scroll for a good while before you find the end. It's a lot. She's been in a lot of stuff. But in addition to all of her film stuff, she was also working on a podcast with one of her good friends, Heather Duffy, called Better Together. And the two of them would just talk about stuff, honestly. I don't know. It was interesting to listen to some of the podcasts, but a lot of the time Anne ends up talking about very personal stuff from her past, things going on with Ellen, especially in light of Ellen moving out of the country to Africa. She talks about how she feels so much safer and she can actually breathe for the first time in forever because Ellen is on the other side of the world. And that is telling because they've been split up for like 20 years at this point. In the podcast, she mentions how she's going to release a sequel to her original memoirs. Her first ones are called Call Me Crazy. This next one's going to be called Call Me Anne. And the way I've had them described, I guess, would be that the initial one was talking about all of the alleged abuse that she endured and all of the things that she went through in her childhood and becoming a famous actress. And her second memoir was more of how she conquered and overcame and became a new person after kind of working through these traumas. She talks a lot about her relationship with Ellen, how traumatic it was. And for the first time, she says that the reason her and Ellen split up, even though Ellen has no idea, her and Ellen split because she was money hungry. She was greedy. And she would do anything for money. For somebody who says that they're all about loving each other and spreading love and being kind, she didn't follow that behind the scenes. She was all talk. And so Anne said we just had differing opinions and we had different values. So she decided to end it.
You broke up with her because she had a lot of money, or you broke up with her because...
I broke up with her because her goal was to have a lot of money, and mine was to find love, and hers was I want 60 billion. Good luck. Our forks are never going to meet. The further we stay on with this, the further we will be apart.
Okay. She didn't live in that loving kindness.
No, she didn't.
I feel that you were so wronged. And now to know that you were continuing to be wronged, it fires me up a little bit.
But there's one thing that I know about somebody who is greedy or somebody who has this greed addiction. It's not the greed itself. It's not this love of money itself that is actually scary about someone who's greedy. It's what they'll do or the lengths they'll go to get this money to satiate their greed. That's what's scary. So it leads me to believe that she saw some things that Ellen was doing she didn't like. And it was probably something for money, possibly trafficking. Who knows? Could be anything.
I felt that it was in the hands of the people who needed to speak their truth. I hadn't spoken to Ellen in years, and I feel that the stories that need to be listened to are being told.
Couple that with allegations in 2020 that Ellen had an unsafe work environment, and the show got audited, multiple producers were fired, and then 2 years after the show tried to resurface, they had to shut it down because it just lost all of its momentum. Now, supposedly Anne went to rehab in 2001. After that year, there's no documented rehab stints. There's no anything really about her sobriety. Although there is a lot of different tabloid pictures and just things that she does or says, or kind of just the way that she even acts when she's out on these, photo shoots or on these runways or these premieres. She just seems like she's on something.
The fact that it's taken us 20 years to be able to be at a point where we can listen to the truth again.
And Ellen's fine. She can sit on her pile of money.
I hope you like your money, because that's why I broke up with you.
So I'm not canceled anymore. I don't think I can be canceled again. If people don't tell the truth, then we don't learn anything. We can't have any conversation. That's what happened 20 years ago. Nobody asked the questions. So what's happening when we're canceling people is that we're, denying the opportunity to get to know and learn from them.
Right.
And then what? How does that further us?
People really started to question her sobriety in 2018 when she crashed her car into an apartment complex. I didn't even think about that. It's kind of a theme we're seeing here now. But no charges were filed, and she denied that she was under the influence of anything. Of course, why would you? Deny. The other thing that calls her sobriety into question is on August 5th of 2022, while on the podcast with Heather Duffy, she is seen drinking wine. And so she doesn't seem like she's overdoing it or anything, but she definitely is drinking.
Richard Glass owned Glass Hair Design in Venice Beach, and less than an hour before Anne crashed her car into a nearby house, she popped into his shop to buy a wig.
We discovered that it was Anne Heche, and from there she asked if she could purchase a red wig that was up top, and I said sure. And as I bring it down, I tell her that it's not cut or styled. She said she didn't care. She wanted it anyway. So from there, I bring it down. I tell her it's a little bit dusty. She says, no worry, just sell me some shampoo and conditioner. It's so random. She wasn't speaking in cursive. I say that, if people are impaired, they speak in cursive because it's like you're slurring your words. But she wasn't. She was very, very cordial, very personable, very polite. And the whole encounter was maybe 10 minutes. So it wasn't huge, but it was strange all the same and random.
The visit also seemed pretty pleasant. Check out this selfie Richard snapped with the actress and her new hair.
There was just a coupling of my face. She told me how beautiful I was and had we worked together. And I said, no, we hadn't, but I'm available for you. You let me know. Sure. I took a photo with her, and from there, she left and, went about her day.
So that calls into question whether she's truly sober or not after this. But after departing from the podcast, she drives her car and she ends up in this apartment complex. And there's this video footage that TMZ posted that shows her in her Mini Cooper. It looks like she had just hit this garage or something at this apartment complex, and there was people around that saw it and they're confronting her about it. And then out of nowhere, she just backs up and takes off.
No, out of the car. No, out of the car. Out of the car. Yeah, out of the car. See if I can take this one.
I'm out of here.
And she takes off quick. The other thing we see in this video, if we look at a still shot, is there's like a little, it looks like a little 4-ounce bottle with a red cap. And for all my partiers out there, you guys know what that is. And so people speculate that she was drinking and driving. We can't say one way or the other. It could have just been one that was in there from the past. Who knows? It's led a lot of people to speculate that she was definitely under the influence while she was driving around, crashing into this apartment complex. Plus, she was drinking on wine at the podcast. So who knows? We're not exactly sure where she goes from here until she's spotted on a Ring camera flying down Preston Avenue at speeds of upwards of 70 miles per hour. Now, I was told that it could have been up to 100 miles per hour. But I also realized, the Ring camera footage, you can kind of find where that house is. So I found that house. It's like 600 feet away. You can hear how long her car is peeling out in this video headed down this street. And then after about 6 seconds, you hear a some sort of crash explosion. So at 600 feet, 6 seconds, that would be about 68.8 miles per hour, according to my calculations. So maybe 70 miles per hour. Down a residential street, it's pretty fast. Her car goes careening down the street and eventually ends into somebody's house. The car immediately ignites, and obviously neighbors are like, whoa, what was that? Tons of witnesses are there to see what happened, and a lot of the neighbors immediately jump to action. In fact, there's a neighbor named Lynn Bernstein who spoke to the news and said that they were really trying to help this person out of the car before any of the firefighters got there. And they were all talking to Anne. They actually got close enough to be able to touch her and talk to her. They asked if she was okay, and she responded, "I'm not okay." And then they asked her to lift her hand or some way to like signal that, where she was. And she said, "I can't move my hand." So we have neighbors, eyewitnesses, saying that she was coherent and talking to the people that were trying to help her on scene. Obviously, somebody called 911.
What's the emergency there?
A car just went through my neighbor's house.
Okay.
And very fast because it's like in the second room. And we don't know what.
Okay.
People are just clearing up the stuff here.
So that the car went all the way into the house?
Yes. Like 10 feet into the house.
Is there anybody pinned or trapped inside the vehicle?
No.
Are there any hazards like down power lines, vehicles on fire, anything like that?
Not immediate that I can see visually.
Okay. Okay. Now, is it safe for you to get next to the patients?
Somebody is doing that right now.
Okay.
It's not safe because somebody's going there now.
Was anyone thrown out of any of the vehicles?
It doesn't look like it. It's got the flashes on. It's got the door open. We're making communication.
And you said nobody's pinned or trapped. Do we have everybody that was in that house accounted for?
Everybody that was in the house is accounted for, yes.
Okay. How about everybody that was in the vehicle? Are they all accounted for?
We don't know. We just made contact. It looks somebody is opening the back to see if we can exit because they're kind of trapped in the front door.
Somebody's trapped by the car?
Inside the car. Whoever was driving.
They're trapped in the car?
They get somebody real quick.
We've got lots of help already coming. A lot of help on the way. Now, can you safely get next to that person that's in the car?
There might be hose. Okay, I'm gonna get a hose. It sounds like the person, whoever's trapped inside, might be okay. Right now we're just freaking out about water and the hose. I don't know if my reach.
You're getting a water hose? Is there something on fire there?
There's smoke. Somebody smelled smoke.
Is the house on fire?
No, not the house. Not the house. Somebody just yelled from the inside. It's water.
Is the car on fire?
Might have smelled water. It might be. I didn't see flames. Somebody just said get water.
Okay, let's go back and find out if that house is on fire.
Okay.
And then we need to find out about that other person that's in the car, whether he's trapped in the car or...
Yeah, he's definitely trapped.
Is he awake? Can you find out if the patient's awake?
Is the patient awake? Yeah, there's a fire. There's a fire, yeah.
The house is on fire now?
Yeah.
It's the car that's on fire in the house?
There's fire going in. And there's smoke.
Is there smoke or just fire? I mean, is there fire or just smoke?
I smell smoke. I smell fire.
But it's not on fire? It's just smoke?
It has been fired. I don't see flames. I don't see flames, but there's a lot of smoke.
There's a lot of smoke.
There's a lot of smoke. Go this way. I don't know if it'll reach.
What part of the car is smoking?
What is smoking? It's a lot of smoke. It's taking off.
It's on. So is the car catching on fire?
Yes.
Okay.
In the house.
Okay, get everybody out of the house. Can you get that driver out of the car?
No. Well, is there anybody trapped in the car? Yes. Is there somebody trapped in the car? Yes. So yeah, there's somebody trapped in the car.
Okay, I'm gonna stay on the phone with you.
Okay. Is there anybody else inside? Just the person in the car? Just the person in the car is the only person inside. The smoke is turning really black. It's definitely up the hill. It's a big fire. It's a big fire. Okay. I see the fire truck just right here.
Now, the crash happened at about 10:56 a.m. It was at about 11 o'clock that the 911 dispatchers received a phone call. After that phone call was made, obviously they made it to the scene real quick, but it took them about 25 minutes before they even realized that there was somebody still in the vehicle. The other thing that I thought was worth noting, the ambulance that showed up, they showed up after the firemen were there. And the firemen immediately directed all the ambulance to go inside and help the lady whose home it was that just got destroyed. It was her and all of her pets were still in there. So they rushed in to help her, and they didn't let any of the EMTs try and help with the whole fire situation. And they still didn't know if there was a person inside of this car or what was even in this garage that they were trying to put this fire out. But it took them 59 firefighters, 45 minutes to put this one car/house fire out. Doesn't that seem crazy? Yeah, it seemed crazy to me too. So I was looking into other reports. Other fires of, very similar nature are typically put out in like 20, 25 minutes, half the time. So what took them so long? It took them 25 minutes before they even realized somebody was even in the car. Then they start putting this fire out and they say it took them way too long and the car was lodged in the middle of the house so they couldn't get to it. But nothing is as strange as what happens next. There's speculation that the reason the fire took so long to put out is because they let it go on that long. Either they were paid off or they weren't firefighters at all. And one of the things I found very interesting is that there's a few of these firefighters whose outfits are way too clean. All the other guys look like they fought a few fires in their time. These guys look like they just started today. And yet somehow, these are the guys that we see wheeling Anne Heche out on the gurney into the ambulance. But the craziest thing happens as she's getting pushed into the ambulance. She sits up, rips open this body bag she's in, and it looks like she's trying to escape. Now, everybody online, all the news media, all the mainstream narratives say that she was so badly burned and she had such bad smoke inhalation that she was immediately declared brain dead and she was immediately taken into the hospital and ended up in a coma. But if we take a look at this video, it clearly shows Anne Heche sitting up, not in a coma, not brain dead. And if we look at her body, she does not appear to be that badly burned. What gives? I also found reports that say that only 12% of her body actually sustained burns, and they were only second-degree burns. And I know that's still bad. I'm sure that really sucked still, but it wasn't third-degree burns on more than 25% of her body, which can be fatal. What the mainstream coroner's report and findings all say is that Anne Heche suffered a severe anoxic brain injury, likely from the accident and then from prolonged smoke exposure. That kind of oxygen deprivation can leave you essentially brain dead after a while. But you can't be brain dead and then go unbrain dead and then go brain dead again. So how is she sitting up on this gurney? The crash happened on August 5th. She was declared brain dead and in a coma on August 5th. Then on August 11th, she was officially declared dead by the state of California. Because apparently, if you're declared brain dead, then you're legally dead. So she died again on August 11th. And then on August 14th, they officially pulled the plug and her heart stopped. And she died for the third time. So there's multiple reports saying multiple different dates of when she actually was declared no longer with us. That alone is kind of fishy. On top of the fact that there's really not much else known about what happened after she went into this coma. She was rushed to an intensive burn unit, and she was kept under police surveillance because the police opened up a DUI investigation into her whole case. And then once she passed away, suddenly the police decide, we're no longer going to investigate. Nothing to see here. She's gone. Nothing to investigate. We don't need to know. That's weird, right? And of course, on top of everything else going on with all the news reporting,
authorities have revealed that preliminary testing indicates that Anne Heche had drugs in her system after the car crash that left her in a coma. A Los Angeles Police Department public information officer tells NBC News that a blood draw, quote, revealed the presence of drugs, adding that a second test would be done to rule out any substances or medications administered to her at the hospital. TMZ reports that Heche did not have alcohol in her system, but was allegedly under the influence of cocaine and possibly fentanyl, citing law enforcement sources. LAPD's PIO additionally revealed that the case is being investigated as a felony DUI traffic collision due to the fact that there was a, quote, female in the house who was engulfed in flames.
They obviously slam her with all of this, she must have been high on this, or she must have been doing that, and look at this alcohol bottle in her car when she crashed into this apartment. People are all focusing on how she must have been high or on something when all this happened. That's the only thing that makes this make sense, right? Wrong. Toxicology report comes back, and it does show traces of the coffee table powder and the devil's lettuce. But if you guys know anything about those substances, they stay in your system for a little bit longer than one day. The levels that were in her system show that she was not actively using these substances. This was just something that was residual in her system. So that solves the whole was she or was she not sober thing, right? It does make this all a little bit more weird to know that she wasn't drinking, she wasn't on any drugs, and the toxicology report also showed the Fenty, but the only reason it showed that is because that's something that they gave her for pain relief after she was hospitalized because of obviously the intense burns.
The sad update about Anne Heche, the actress, declared brain dead, but being kept on life support for the possibility of organ donation.
Heche on life support after slipping into a coma following a fiery crash in Los Angeles exactly 1 week ago. According to reps, she still has a heartbeat but is still on machines, but only for the sake of preserving her organs for donation.
So why was she speeding through this neighborhood? Why did she smash into this lady's house? What is going on here? And how did she sit up on that gurney, even without coffee table powder coursing through her veins? Now, of course, things get a little murky, but I wanted to start by talking about Bruffy's Towing. This is the towing company that came and picked up Anne's car from the scene once they finally removed it out of this house. Bruffy's Towing is a police towing company. I don't really know what that means exactly. I think they just work exclusively for the police, like privately contracted. I'm not really sure, but they exclusively have that on their website that they're a police tow company. So this tow yard has a bunch of impounded vehicles from accidents, different crimes, and they can get released. Obviously, they get released typically to insurance companies, the owners if they're still drivable. In Anne's case, that car is definitely not drivable or salvageable, so they would honestly just scrap it, and typically the insurance company does that. And I believe it was on September 5th or September 9th, just about a month after the crash, this vehicle was picked up, according to Bruffy's Towing logs. And also according to Bruffy's Towing logs, there was no bill. There was no lot fees. There was no storage fees. There was no nothing. And if you guys know anything about tow companies, that's not a thing. They'll charge you all these fees that don't even make any sense. They all sound like the same fee, but it ends up costing you hundreds of thousands of dollars to get your car out of the stupid tow yard. So it made me think that maybe somebody like in the government grabbed this car because maybe they had some sort of vested interest in this car. The other thing with the car is that it very, very, very much looks like another car that I saw from a different case from 2013. You guys might have heard of him. His name's Michael Hastings. These two cars look identical, and that makes sense because they're in very similar circumstances. Michael Hastings' car was speeding down this, I wouldn't say residential road, but it's certainly not a highway. It's kind of like a business district road. According to reports, there had been 0 accidents from 2001 until 2009 on that road. It's a very safe road. But Michael Hastings, not so much. He goes flying down this road. They assume he was hitting speeds of 100 miles an hour because his car was actually airborne, according to certain witnesses. But after his car goes flying past this camera, you just see it fly over the median and smash into one of the giant palm trees there and burst into flames. Sounds very similar to what we just experienced with Anne Heche flying down the street uncontrollably. The other thing that you note about these two incidents is that, well, first of all, Anne Heche didn't have any black box recordings or reports come out, which is very typical in a car crash situation. In that Macy Marie Lathers case, they had a black box thing saying that she didn't apply the brakes. She actually applied the accelerator. But there was no black box report for Anne Heche. Also, no black box report for Michael Hastings. Although I don't know if that technology existed then. Maybe it did. Still no report. But as I mentioned before, eyewitnesses saw Michael Hastings' car take flight for a second. He actually got some air. And the only skid marks showing any attempt at him hitting the brakes was these skid marks from when the car touched back down after getting a little bit of air. Left a couple of small skid marks, but they weren't skid marks from braking. So there was no evidence of him trying to brake. And in that video of Anne Heche, we don't hear her trying to brake. We don't hear a... We just hear a... So I don't know. It doesn't sound like either one of them were trying to brake. They might have even been accelerating into it.
Now, there were other witnesses there, but he was the only person who saw the accident from beginning to end.
Y miré el carro que iba a todo lo que daba el carro, no se detenía, entonces yo corría a la calle a mirar, porque pues yo miré como que él quería suicidarse, pues ahí miré así. Y corrí a la calle, entonces me pregunté yo para ver en dónde se iba a estampar. Y en cuanto dije eso, fue cuando se estampó en La Palma. El carro iba brinque y brinque, sacando lumbre en la tanque de la gasolina, bastante chispas. Al llegar donde se estampó en La Palma, fue cuando saltó la lumbre, pues fuerte, alto. Y hubo explosiones también y todo. La transmisión la encontraron unos cuantos pies adelante del carro. Y después que apagaron los bomberos, todo él, yo me acerqué a mirarlo, pues, y yo no sé si de nervios o no sé qué, yo nomás le miré lo que es de aquí para acá, esto nomás, fue todo lo que yo le miraba a él, yo no miré el cuerpo de él.
You saw the sparks prior to him hitting anything. You just saw it at the bottom of the car.
Sí, bastante, desde que comenzó de la luz, porque pasó la luz y todavía más para atrás de la luz donde pasó.
How fast would you say his car was going if you would have to do an estimate?
Yo pienso que iba lo que marcaba la ruedita de la velocidad del tablero. Yo pienso que iba todo lo que daba el carro, lo que podía correr. Entonces pienso que encontró más hoyos más hondos. Es donde se le fue la cabuela, se colió así. Fue cuando ganó derecho a la palma, se subió arriba y fue cuando se estrelló ahí, pues.
Did you see him lose control of the vehicle, and at what point did he lose control?
En cuanto pasó la luz de la Menros, como unos 50 pies adelante es cuando perdió más el control y fue cuando se fue contra La Palma.
Before, he hit the tree, was there any dip in the road? Did you notice him hit a dip and that's when he lost control?
Sí, de acá yo miraba que el carro ahí pegó tres saltos o 4 más fuertes. Fue donde ya lo destanteó y ya ganó para La Palma.
How long did it take for police to show up to the scene?
No, sería como los 3-4 minutos, los 5.
Were there any other cars following him?
No, yo no miré ni uno. No, iba solo él, yo no miré carros y no se podían arrimar porque cada ratito estaba echando explosivos, explotaba pues cada ratito y nadie se arrimaba hasta que llegaron los bomberos y pues, ya cuando llegaron ellos yo pienso pienso que antes de apagar la lumbre yo pienso en donde se pegó ya estaba muerto porque iba demasiado recio, muy fuerte. Cuando pasó la luz de la Menros, él como que se miró que le apretó más fuerte. Es cuando perdió más el control en el carro, ya no lo pudo detener.
There's also video footage showing that Michael Hastings' engine literally flew like 100 feet across the street out of the car once he hit this tree. And I saw this video of a crash test video, just testing that same model car, hitting a brick wall. And the engine does not go flying anywhere. In fact, not even remotely close. He must have been going extremely, extremely fast. Now, I'm sure you'd also be interested to know that Michael Hastings is a renowned journalist known for exposing government secrets. His first book that really took off was called I Lost My Love in Baghdad, and it documents his true story of how he lost his fiancée. Her name's Andrea Parmovovich, I think. She ended up getting transferred for work. She was over in Baghdad and a convoy that she was in got attacked. And he wrote this book about it and got kind of famous for it. But after that, he started looking into all these different weird government secrets, things that are kind of shady that go on in the military. He wrote a lot of pieces, some of which got published in big major publications like the Rolling Stone. One such article that he wrote for the Rolling Stone was about a NATO commander and U.S. Army general named Stanley McChrystal. And it talks about how him and a lot of the other guys in his unit that were in high-ranking positions within the military were talking trash about President Obama, making a lot of racist remarks on top of that. McChrystal was really worried after doing this interview with Michael Hastings that something bad might come out in the interview. And they consistently joked about, haha, this guy, he's dangerous, man. You got to be careful around this guy. You've got to be real careful with this guy. And they also would come up and directly ask or tell him, like, hey, I don't want anything bad coming out in this article about me. And so before he ended up leaving after spending some time with the U.S. general over in Afghanistan, he assured them, like, no, nothing bad's going to come out in this article. Sure enough, bad stuff came out in this article. He basically said everything that was going on over there. And it was so bad for McChrystal that he ended up having to resign from his position because of all the hate that he got and because of the investigation that was started into him and all the guys he was working with, working underneath him. But quite possibly the most interesting thing about Michael Hastings is that just before his crash, he had released this email talking to Jennifer Robinson, which is one of his lawyers, saying that he was onto some big story. And this big story was going to force him to go into hiding because he was worried for his safety. And then he ends up in this fiery, explosive car crash. Something's fishy. And just like the Anne Heche situation, they started pushing in the media that he was high on substances and that he had been talked to by his family. They were trying to convince him to go to rehab. They're saying that he must have been high on the devil's lettuce and that mathematics. But the toxicology report comes back and shows that he was not actively intoxicated at all. But we're still not done, you guys. 2 days before Anne Heche's crash, a U.S. representative named Jackie Walorski was driving in a car with two of her staffers. They were attempting to pass another vehicle when they ended up crossing the median and smashing head-on into another car. All three of them passed away instantly. Nobody in the car ended up making it out.
And we have some sad breaking news out of Indiana. U.S. Representative Jackie Walorski is dead after a car crash in the northern part of the state of Indiana.
Police say a vehicle crossed over the center line and hit the representative's car head on. The Republican congresswoman is one of 4 people who died in the crash. Her district director, Zachary Potts, and her communications director, Emma Thompson, were also in the vehicle during the crash.
The congresswoman had served Indiana's 2nd district since 2013. She was 58 years old.
Now, the first thing I thought of when I heard about this was this video that I saw of this Tesla that like pulls over on the side of the road, likely because they're experiencing some sort of weird issue. And then the car just takes off and starts flying down the road, flying for miles until it finally comes to a crashing end. Just like in this video of this Tesla, they start speeding up and then suddenly they're like, oh, we got to get around this car. We're going to smash into the back of them. And then the car just takes off from there. And likely it's just the car doing this. I wouldn't imagine there's a person doing this. But it made me think that that's likely the same thing that happened to Jackie Walorski. The other interesting thing with Jackie is that she's a U.S. representative that was a huge, huge proponent of passing different bills that fought human trafficking, sex trafficking, all types of different women's and children's rights. She was a huge proponent in all these different aspects, so you can imagine she wasn't too popular amongst other politicians. Most notably, she sponsored the Human Trafficking Prevention, Intervention, and Recovery Act of 2014, among other ones. So if you take all of these different crashes into account, one of the common denominators is this out-of-control vehicle. And I was looking more into it, and it's not too far-fetched to think that the government or somebody out there could remotely control these cars. Within each car nowadays, all these cars with the computer chips in them, pretty much cars that have any sort of nice infotainment system, they have a QNX operating system built into the computer in the car. If it's a computer, if it operates on networks, if it's some sort of program software, then it can be hacked.
QNX is indeed a real-time operating system designed for high reliability and deterministic performance. This means it is built to handle tasks that requiring precise timing, which is essential in fields like automotive systems, medical devices, and industrial automation. One of the core features of QNX is its microkernel architecture. This design separates applications, drivers, and services into distinct address spaces. Why is this important? If one component fails, it does not bring down the entire system. This allows for quick recovery without any downtime, which is vital for applications like autonomous vehicle control. In the realm of automotive software, QNX plays a significant role. Its real-time capabilities are crucial for processing sensor data and managing infotainment systems. Imagine a car that can update its software over the air without any delay. That's the kind of performance QNX provides. As vehicles transition to software-defined architectures, QNX's modular design supports the integration of artificial intelligence applications and cybersecurity protocols. When it comes to in-vehicle app development, developers relying on QNX for applications that need real-time responsiveness. Think about collision avoidance systems or driver monitoring tools. These applications must react instantly to ensure safety. QNX also features a layered security model, which aligns with automotive cybersecurity standards, protecting vehicles from potential threats in connected car environments. In summary, QNX is not just a real-time operating system. It is a critical component in the evolution of automotive software and connectivity. Its features ensure that vehicles can operate safely, efficiently, and reliably in an ever-changing technological landscape.
There is a CIA document that was leaked through WikiLeaks, and it talks all about this QNX murder device, which is essentially a way that the CIA has found they can hack into this QNX module, and they can control the car from this operating system. They can control things like the windshield washer fluid being sprayed. They can see things like tire pressure, how fast you're going. It can control braking. It can control acceleration. And that was the one that really sparked my curiosity. This QNX thing can really control your acceleration. People can really control your car remotely. And I found two videos that I think were very interesting that highlight this topic. One is a kid who literally plugs something into his OBD2 connector and uses an Xbox controller to drive his car. It's as simple as that. But I also found another one where these guys found a way to hack into the QNX device, and then they remotely shut down this guy's car. Check it out.
It's not fun to have your 2-ton SUV's brakes hacked just as you're parking in front of a ditch.
Okay, hold on tight. Hold on. Oh,
That's what I've learned from Charlie Miller and Chris Valasek, a pair of hackers who have spent the last year developing a piece of software that can wirelessly sabotage this 2014 Jeep Cherokee. It hasn't been altered in any way. There are no devices attached to it. But like many thousands of Jeeps around the world, it can be remotely hacked over the internet through a cellular connection to its entertainment system that would allow someone to take over its steering, its transmission, and even its brakes. To demonstrate that, I'm going to act as today's crash test dummy and drive it on the highway here in St. Louis, while Charlie and Chris hijack its digital systems from Charlie's house miles away. They wouldn't tell me what they had plans, but they assured me that it wouldn't be anything life-threatening.
remember, Andy, no matter what happens,
Don't panic.
It's not the first time I've driven a car while it's being attacked by these two hackers. But in 2013, they were in the back seat, and their laptops were wired into the vehicle through a port in its dashboard. Now they're sending the same sort of attacks remotely, and I have no idea what they might do.
He's going as fast as I've seen him,
So first we're going to turn the fan on him.
Yeah, let's turn the fan on, see if he even notices.
All right, something just turned on, all the fans and AC and stuff. I didn't do that. The trick started small. Oh my God. There's a picture of Charlie and Chris in tracksuits that just appeared on the dashboard. But as I drove down the interstate, things started getting unpleasant and very loud. Perfect. Can't turn it down.
This was such a fun video.
Kill the engine.
So we're killing the engine right now.
It says park sense. Actually, can't accelerate. I stomped on the gas, but the Jeep slowed to a crawl. It says 43 miles an hour, but I'm not going that fast. I turned on my hazard lights, but I was still stuck in the right lane with no shoulder to escape onto. Guys, I'm stuck on the highway.
What did he say? I don't know, I think he's panicking. He's not gonna be able to hear us with that radio. It's so loud.
Guys, I need the accelerator to work again.
The accelerator will work.
It won't work!
You're doomed.
Seriously, it's dangerous. I need to move.
You gotta turn the car off!
Okay.
Now you should be good to go. Semi drove by.
All right, I'm gonna pull over because I have PTSD. Charlie and Chris have only tested the full range of their attacks on a Jeep Cherokee. But they say that hundreds of thousands of late model Chrysler vehicles may be vulnerable through a feature called Uconnect, an internet-connected computer in the dashboard known as its head unit.
These cars, head units, expose a particular service that probably they didn't want to. It lets you do things like query it for information like the GPS or the VIN or all sorts of other things, but it also lets you just run commands.
So you have to first break into the car remotely over the cell network and then move laterally if you want to do things like send CAN messages. And those are the messages that we can use to control things like steering or the windshield wipers or braking.
They plan to release a portion of their exploit code at the annual Black Hat Hacker Conference next month. They've also alerted Chrysler, which is issuing a security patch. But they say a lot more needs to be done to protect a new generation of cars that are increasingly connected to the internet and potentially hackable.
We wanted to point out, to show that this attack has serious consequences for this vehicle, and so we did, attack you. But we did it in as safe a way as we could, so we didn't want you to get hurt, obviously. That's why we're working, is to make sure that we figure out vulnerabilities, weaknesses, get them fixed.
We're only two guys with one car, right? So, we can't look at every car, and we want to release this information because more people like us need to be focused on this problem.
After their stunt on the highway, Chris and Charlie still wanted to show me a couple of other tricks. Below a certain speed, they can control the Jeep's steering as long as it's in reverse, pop its locks, mess with the speedometer, and, of course, disable the brakes. Okay, hold on tight. Hold on. Oh,
He's not getting out of that. I don't think so. We're going to be doing some pushing.
So not only is it possible, but it doesn't seem that difficult to do, and any technology that we have has been in the government's hands for at least 20 years. At least. So you can only imagine what they're using this technology for. And there's another story we haven't even talked about yet. That guy's name, I'm sure all you guys already know, but his name's Paul Walker. And he's kind of his own episode, so I didn't want to dive too much into that. But yet another example of a car going up in flames. But back to Anne Heche. Who would have the motive or the desire to see her go away? And why? Well, after the release of this film, This Girl in Room 13, and her outspokenness against trafficking, it makes you wonder if she maybe had some sort of insider knowledge about what was going on in these underground trafficking worlds, especially after her time with Ellen DeGeneres. And she continues to say that after 20 years, she's still scared of Ellen, and she still feels like Ellen hasn't changed much. She's still doing the same greedy things, and she's up to the same no good. So it just makes you wonder, what does Anne Heche know about Ellen? She also talks about, on this podcast with Heather Duffy, the real reasons why her and Ellen split up. She talks about this greed, but then she starts talking about how she's waited 20 years to start revealing the truth about what she actually went through and her real reasons for leaving.
Give me a break. There's one question people want to know. What do I think about Ellen? And in fact, I haven't said that yet. I have not rambled on about her for one single moment. For 20 years, I have withheld my understanding. I have been canceled since the day I was born. I've been buried since the day I was born. Every single truth that I spoke, I was hit more, buried more, fucked more, or despised more.
anymore, and then had calculated visions and circulations of systems that spun me up and out of the system that would in any way challenge the fact that she was not telling her own truth, but another's. Why do you think she tried to put me in an institution, folks? I called my mother. Guess what? 2 people who wanted more than anything to have my truth buried. It was not my timing. I did not and could not ask God for what that would be. All I could do was stay on my truth, do what I was doing, and study this thing called love that we tried to bury. And now I am up and out of the ground. And unfortunately, those 2 women could not shut me down.
So why did you break up with Ellen?
Well, I think you know the answer to that question. I think we could probably whittle it down to one thing. If we live in loving kindness, and that is my destination and my dream for us all, I would say that was not her goal.
But that was her banner, which she led with.
Listen, when you want to steal somebody else's language, the problem is you hit a wall, because the language is enough to drive you forth. Its purposing was enough to give her power.
So basically what you're saying is you can only keep up the gig for so long.
I didn't know what, as I always call God, your grandpa, Kiki. I don't know Kiki's timing. But you face what you face in the mirror every single day. And unfortunately, it's just like I say in my first book, you don't get 2 cups of insanity in and get to take 1 cup out. You meet your maker.
Well, that was a riddle, I gotta say.
Well, God is a riddle. Listen, the reality is we have gotten to a place where we are not looking at the truth, and we are getting its consequences in our face.
We have to also look at what was going on during this time period in 2022. Ellen's show had just shut down. She tried to revamp it after all the allegations against her show being a hostile work environment, but it wasn't as popular and it wasn't making as much money, and it was on the downward slope, essentially. So they decided in 2022 to call it quits, which leaves Ellen kind of, I don't know, in this dark spot. Her show just failed. She's got all these negative allegations and negative press surrounding her. Having something come out from Anne Heche talking about her being involved in possible human trafficking, that could be the final blow for Ellen DeGeneres. So she's got more motive than anybody, in my opinion. I think now would be a good time to mention that Ellen's first girlfriend, when she was younger, before she got famous, her name's Kat Perkoff. Her and Ellen were going through, I don't know, some relationship troubles, and they were living together at the time. And Ellen had decided to move out to, quote, show her a lesson. When Kat Perkoff got back, she realized Ellen wasn't there, but decided to go out and see if she could find her. Ellen was at her brother's rock show, and Kat showed up there and was trying to talk to her and convince her to move back into the house. And Ellen just pretended like she didn't hear her at all. Shortly after that, Ellen says she was driving home, and she drove past this big, fiery car crash. And she just thought, you know, that's unfortunate, but she didn't think it was somebody she knew, so she kept driving. It wasn't until the next day, allegedly, that she finds out that it was her girlfriend, Kat Perkoff, that had gotten into this accident.
We were living together at the time. My brother's band was performing, and we had broken up. We had fought a lot. She was trying to get me to come back home. I acted like I couldn't hear her because the music was too loud. I was planning on moving back in. I just was trying to teach her a lesson, and I was staying with some friends. So I just acted like I couldn't hear, and I was being really dismissive of her. She had left before us, and as we were driving home, we saw a car, and it was split in 2, and we heard sirens behind us, so it had just happened. Nobody was there yet, and we just kept going. And I found out the next morning that it was her in the car.
No measure of time from the cradle.
My sister, Kat Perkoff, died at age 23, and by that time she had lived a life well beyond her years. She was a runaway, a writer-poet, a drug smuggler. I was 18 when my sister died. 23 years later, I realized I still have questions about my sister's life and death.
And interestingly enough, the reason that Ellen started exploding in popularity was because of this joke that she actually made out of that whole situation. Tell me that's not a little suspicious. And one of the other things I found very interesting was this is in the aftermath, in the afterwake of all the Epstein stuff going on. And I'm sure Ellen has already been tied with the Epstein stuff through all these different allegations and speculation from different people online. So I'm sure she's trying hard to distance herself from that. She does not need Anne Heche pulling her right back into it. But I thought it was extremely, extremely weird, and it might mean something, might mean nothing, I don't know. Ellen DeGeneres' studio, her whole setup on her show, looks exactly like Jeffrey Epstein's temple on his island. Look at this. Look at this. This is crazy. And not only that, but she's got this tweet. And she has this tweet to Puffy wishing him a happy birthday, to Cuddle McSnuggle stuff. And then it says, you don't need to know why. You don't need to know. But we know.
We know.
And she had Sean P. Diddy Puff Daddy Brother Love Combs on her show multiple times.
Diddy, come on out.
So with all these ties to Diddy, possible Epstein ties, being in this wealthy elite circle, chasing greed, and with the comment that Anne made earlier in this podcast in August of 2022, talking about how happy she is that Ellen moved to Rwanda, giving her some space to breathe, that insinuates that there was ongoing issues between them all the way up until 2022.
Yes, apparently she has gone off to Africa to join her guerrillas in a peaceful retreat. So now, here's the thing about that.
Well, you know her show is off. Do you know that much pop culture?
I did know, but what I'm feeling is that finally she's enough away that I'm starting to be able to breathe again.
Really?
It's like it's like fresh air a little bit. Do you know what I'm saying?
Okay.
I think that's another show. But I have to say, there is a moment that I feel like, well, you know what I feel like with Ellen in Africa? I feel like a little bit like a new man.
Also in August of 2022, Anne finalized her manuscript for the Call Me Anne book that she was writing. So this book could have had secrets about Ellen. She's been waiting 20 years to say some of these things. The book was announced that month to be released in January 2023, and then suddenly Anne ends up in the situation she ends up in. It could have been a bombshell of a book, but with it being released posthumously, since she's no longer with us as of August 2022, it seems fishy. And it got even fishier 4 months later when Ellen's main co-producer and DJ for the Ellen DeGeneres Show winds up unalived from a self-inflicted wound to the head in December of 2022, just 4 months after Anne. It's too close for comfort. And yet again, Twitch is another one that's going to be his own episode, I think, so I don't want to dive too much into it, but he had close ties with Ellen. He never had any issues with, mental health. He was said to be extremely happy. Even after the Ellen DeGeneres Show ended, he now had this new celebrity status as the DJ from the Ellen Show. So he was using that to continue dancing, DJing, and he was just doing his own thing. Certainly nothing to indicate that he would do what he did. In addition to all of this, there is this other manuscript that really only thrives in fringe circles on the internet, but it's called the Unveiled Chains Manuscript, supposedly written by Anne Heche. What people speculate is that this manuscript was part of her original Call Me Anne book, but she wasn't able to include it for one reason or another because of it being too risky maybe. And so this manuscript actually has 14 different names of people who are all involved in child or human trafficking. And 2 of those people allegedly have ties to Ellen DeGeneres. So kind of a bombshell piece of writing, if you ask me. But unfortunately, it's not been substantiated. Nobody can find it online. There's no proof of any kind to show that it really does exist. Just a lot of speculative posts out there about it. But I did find it interesting that her book was released after she passed, because that does open things up for something like that to just disappear. She is not the final person to give the final say on any of her writing, and she didn't sign off on the actual memoir that was published to the public. And this is a little bit off topic, might mean something, might mean nothing, but I did find it interesting. I found this post by Enti Lawyer, and it's blind item number 3, and it reads, "The deaths were really far apart, not in the same place and not in the same manner, but there is evidence that the mysterious LA hotel death years ago is related to the death of an actress who died not that long ago. Related in the sense that the same people did it," which is kind of weird. At the bottom it says Elisa Lam, and Anne Heche, which does seem to be who it's referencing. These anti-lawyer posts are always so cryptic and hard to decipher. But Elisa Lam is the young lady. She's a Canadian student who was staying at the Cecil Hotel in Los Angeles in 2013. And she is caught on video in this elevator. Looks like she's running from somebody or maybe hiding from somebody. And for some reason, this elevator never closes while she's there trying to make it go somewhere. She ends up getting out of the elevator, and it appears that she's talking to somebody or she's talking to herself. We don't really know. You can't see. And then after this mysterious video where she just walks away from the elevator, and then it suddenly closes after not closing for like 5 to 7 minutes. But this young girl disappears, and they don't end up finding her until they start getting complaints about the funny tasting water in the hotel. And they go inspect the whole water tank and whatever's going on with the water system in this hotel. And they find the body of Elisa Lam. So it seems very unrelated, but we've got anti-lawyer here saying that the same people carried this out as the ones that carried out Anne Heche's situation. Very interesting, right? So we've got proof that the government, and likely anybody who can purchase that kind of technology, can infiltrate your vehicle, control the operating system, do what they want, hit the accelerator, maybe even control the steering wheel. Who knows? None of these accidents we've talked about, Michael Hastings, Jackie Walorski, Paul Walker, which we didn't really talk about, but same thing, and Anne Heche, all of them had situations where the brakes weren't applied and these cars just completely lost control, just like that Tesla video I showed you. Then we've got Anne's supposedly explosive memoirs that might have information leading back to Ellen. We've got Twitch turning up, self-exiting 4 months after Anne. Like, how many people can surround Ellen before we start to think that there's something going on with this chick, including her first girlfriend, Kat Perkoff? And then, of course, as the little cherry on top, we've got the mainstream narrative trying to convince us that Anne Heche and all these other people were just too high and crashed their car because they're just wild and super high on drugs. But I'm not buying it. And I want to know if you guys buy it or not. Drop it in the comments. But that's all I got for you guys this week. I thought it was a pretty interesting story. I mentioned this in my lives. I did not expect this rabbit hole to go so deep, but it definitely led to multiple other rabbit holes as per usual. But if you're stuck in the rabbit holes like I am and you want to check out more of what I've got, I'll leave my Sobering Stories playlist at the end. I'll leave my Hung playlist at the end because that's a good one. Actually, I'm going to leave my Diddy Do It playlist in light of the Diddy trial going on. So if you want to catch up on all the stuff Diddy related, you can do that there. And I'm always going to let YouTube have a say. They're going to choose a video for you. And if that's your speed, then click on that one. But if you don't subscribe, I'm not mad. I'm just really disappointed. What did we talk about? Supporting the homies. I don't know if you remember that, but if you do, support your local homie today. But I look forward to doing this again with you guys next week for another one. And check in with me during the Diddy trial coverage because I'm going to be trying to go live doing Diddy coverage as much as humanly possible. Until then, sleep safe, stay sober, and check your car for interesting devices or if it's acting funny. Later, sobers.
Let's go.